Всім добрий вечір.
On behalf of the brave, on behalf of every father and every mother who waits for freedom, on behalf of our warriors, and paves the way for a new history.
These are the main headlines as of May 18th, 2025. First up, we have operations. Members of a Ukrainian resistance faction known as Atesh announced on May 15th that they had successfully ignited a crucial piece of signaling equipment on a railway line within Russia that is employed by the Russian military. This act of interference was reportedly executed in Russia's Smolensk Oblast, a Western administrative division that adjoins Belarus. The objective behind the action was to impede the flow of armaments and other necessary supplies destined for Russian military units stationed close to Ukraine's northeastern boundary. Ukrainian authorities have previously cautioned that Moscow is concentrating military personnel and resources near Ukraine's Sumy and Kharkiv regions, suggesting preparations for a potential new large-scale military push. Atesh reported on Telegram that the bold undertakings of their operatives have led to considerable setbacks for Russia in its efforts to deliver essential provisions to its frontline forces in a timely manner. Video material circulated by resistance members appears to show an unseen individual filming the event, setting the railway signaling apparatus ablaze under the cover of darkness. According to the information provided by these operatives, the targeted component was situated in the city of Smolensk, which is around 270 kilometers north of the international border between Ukraine and Russia. Satellite data has confirmed the demolition of a storage facility at the Murom instrument building plant situated in Murom within Russia's Vladimir Oblast. This occurred as a result of a Ukrainian unmanned aerial vehicle operation which I reported on several weeks prior. The examination and public release of the visual data were conducted by Dnipro OSINT, an open-source intelligence collective. The affected industrial site is a vital component of Russia's defense sector, specializing in the production of essential triggering and starting mechanisms for munitions. The disseminated satellite pictures indicate that the aerial operation resulted in the obliteration of a single structure within the grounds of the industrial complex. Previously, the Telegram channel known as Dossier Shpiona had conveyed that a large storage building containing completed items had sustained an impact. This structure, thought to have contained ignition components for munitions, was entirely demolished. Further accounts from Astra around that period indicated that a building used for administrative purposes, potentially the primary security entrance, was also brought down. An assessment conducted by British authorities has determined that Ukrainian forces were not involved in the substantial explosion that occurred in Kyiv in April, which led to the ruin of an extensive stockpile of ammunition. According to the intelligence update, the large explosion on the base at Vladimir Oblast was most probably the result of internal operational failures rather than any form of external assault. The depot, positioned roughly 80 kilometers east of Moscow, experienced multiple explosive events on April 22nd. The Ukrainian Center for Countering Disinformation reported that the facility housed an estimated 105,000 metric tons of munitions. This cache included ballistic projectiles, weapons launched from aircraft, air defense armaments, artillery rounds, and ammunition for small firearms intended for deployment to the front lines in Ukraine. Satellite imagery has corroborated the significant extent of the destruction. British officials highlighted that the images, such as one from the UK government dated at April 24, 2025, reveal that an area exceeding 1 square kilometer of the site was impacted by the blasts. The UK's intelligence evaluation views this destruction at the 51st GRAU munitions arsenal as a considerable hindrance to Russia's capacity to supply its forces engaged in Ukraine. The British report also conveyed that armaments damaged by fire, left in an unstable state, or unexploded might have been dispersed outside the facility's perimeter, potentially creating a hazardous situation for civilians in the nearby areas. Comparative satellite images from April 4th and April 24th further illustrate the state of the arsenal before and after the conflagrations and detonations. Russia's Ministry of Defense attributed the cause of the explosions to an initial fire that subsequently triggered the detonation of stored munitions. However, UK intelligence suggested that this explanation aligns with persistent documented deficiencies in Russia's procedures for handling weaponry at its storage facilities. They stated it is likely that inadequate weapons management protocols coupled with negligent storage of munitions were the cause of the loss. The Ukrainian Air Force acknowledged that one of its F-16 fighter jets was down during efforts to counter a Russian aerial assault on the early morning of May 16, 2025. The Air Force Command Communications Office reported that they lost contact with the aircraft at approximately 3:30 a.m. local time. This event signifies the third F-16 that Ukraine's air arm has officially reported as lost. In a prior incident in August, an F-16 went down during a Russian missile strike, which resulted in the pilot not surviving. On April 12th, another pilot also did not survive while conducting a combat mission on a different F-16. According to information released by the Air Force, the fighter aircraft was engaged in an operation to intercept unfriendly aerial objects. Initial details suggest that the pilot had successfully neutralized 3 enemy aerial assets and was in the process of confronting a 4th target using the plane's onboard cannon when a mechanical issue developed. The pilot was able to direct the jet away from an inhabited area safely before ejecting. The Air Force did not disclose the specific type of aerial target the pilot was engaging, although it's known that on the preceding night, Russia had again deployed over 100 unmanned aerial vehicles carrying explosive payloads against Ukrainian urban centers. Ukrainian's Air Force further stated that a search and rescue team swiftly located and retrieved the pilot. His current physical condition is described as satisfactory, and he is now in a secure location with no danger to his life or overall well-being. The Air Force also indicated that an investigative commission has already commenced its work to ascertain the full circumstances that led to the aircraft's downing. The Seoul Medical Facility in the city of Kupiansk, located in Kharkiv Oblast, has ceased operations for the time being. This closure is a direct result of continuous Russian assaults and the significant risk these actions pose for both individuals seeking medical care and healthcare professionals working there. This information was reported by the head of the Kupiansk District Military Administration. Mr. Besedin explained that the medical institution is temporarily halting its services because of the persistent danger posed by aerial bombardments. He further elaborated that this particular hospital was the only one that had remained operational within the city of Kupiansk. He indicated that the current plan for medical personnel involves either transporting individuals directly to the closest available hospitals using ambulances or alternatively providing initial stabilizing care before arranging their transfer to other facilities. He conveyed that the decision to close the hospital was unavoidable and was made with the primary goal of safeguarding lives. He stated that there had been ongoing impacts from ordnance in the immediate vicinity of the hospital. As an example, he mentioned that an educational building situated directly across from the hospital had been struck just 2 days prior. Emergency medical transport vehicles have also been subjected to targeting, creating a perilous environment for the hospital staff. According to official figures, current as of May 15th, approximately 1,750 civilians continue to reside in Kupiansk, with a total of 2,700 individuals remaining across the broader administrative unit. These residents endure a constant barrage of attacks. In the month of May alone, there were 1,900 recorded instances of various types of weaponry being used in the region. Russian President Vladimir Putin has relieved General Oleg Salyukov of his duties as the foremost commander of Russian ground forces. This development was reported by RIA, a news agency with close ties to the Kremlin. The publication conveyed that the general has been removed from his role, and he has been designated as a deputy to Sergei Shoigu, the secretary of Russia's Security Council. The identity of the individual who will take over Salyukov's former command has not been disclosed. Salyukov has been in that post since 2014. He was not a frequent public figure, and media outlets generally mentioned his name only in relation to military ceremonial events. In 2023, BBC News Russia brought to light information indicating that Salyukov's family derived financial gain from these types of events. It was reported that his daughter-in-law, Dina Salyukova, owns a creative firm named HQ Agency, which specializes in organizing military and patriotic celebrations. Among its principal clients are Russia's Defense Ministry and the Administrative Office of the Mayor of Moscow. Up next, we have economy and aid. Norway has outlined its intention to complete the delivery of all of its committed F-16 fighter aircraft to Ukraine by the year 2025. This was shared by the media outlet NRK, which attributed the statement to the Norwegian defense minister. According to the minister, the process of transferring these aircraft is proceeding as planned. However, due to considerations of operational security, the Norwegian government is not publicly disclosing the specific number of F-16s that have already been handed over to Ukraine. It is understood that a total of 6 such fighter jets were retired from Norwegian service in 2021, and the government has stated that these aircraft remain fully capable for combat operations. The initial consignment of F-16s from Norway was anticipated to reach Ukraine during the summer of 2024. As for the broader effort to supply Ukraine with F-16s, in February, the Danish defense minister said that Ukraine had received 12 of the 19 fighters pledged by Denmark. And earlier in February, it was reported that the Ukrainian Air Force had accepted its second batch of F-16 aircraft from the Netherlands, out of a total of 24 that the Netherlands has pledged. Belgium has also stated its intention to donate 2 F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine within 2025, one of which is designated to be utilized as a source of spare parts. Italy's defense minister has introduced a new package of military support for Ukraine to the nation's Public Safety Committee. According to reports from Il Giornale, this assistance is set to include M113 armored personnel carriers, which are older but still considered effective, as well as a satellite-based surveillance system. Despite their considerable age, these M113 vehicles have demonstrated their value as agile and straightforward to operate transports that can play a crucial role in protecting personnel in forward combat zones. When finalized, this latest contribution will represent Italy's 11th such provision of military aid to Ukraine. A Ukrainian firm named Unwave has unveiled a novel electronic warfare apparatus designated as the Patelnia 2K/3K. The company has indicated that this system is designed to counteract unmanned aerial vehicles that release ordnance onto ground troops. The device is designed to be carried in an MOLLE-compatible backpack, and its antenna is configured for a single-handed manipulation. The system functions by generating potent electromagnetic emissions across a specific yet broad spectrum of frequencies. These emissions are typically dispersed in a 360-degree radius around the device. According to some accounts from forward positions, military personnel have reported experiencing deteriorating well-being in proximity to such systems. These health concerns include symptoms such as queasiness, head discomfort, tiredness, and lightheadedness. More concerning are the reported impairments to mental processes. The electromagnetic field is said to adversely influence cerebral functions, leading to diminished concentration, slower response times, and reduced memory. To mitigate the potentially detrimental effects on the soldier operating the equipment, Unwave has incorporated a purpose-built protective hood into the system's design. The system is also outfitted with a detached control interface, which permits its operation from a secure protected location away from the immediate vicinity of the emissions. The European Bank for Reconstruction and Development has adjusted its economic growth prediction for Ukraine in 2025, reducing it from 3.5% forecasted in February to 3.3%. The financial institution has, however, kept its growth outlook for 2026 at an unchanged 5%. This more optimistic forecast is contingent upon the cessation of Russia's military actions against Ukraine and the anticipated economic advantages stemming from the subsequent rebuilding efforts. The EBRD's statement indicated that pressures in global commerce alongside the ongoing war are influencing economic expectations for 2025. They also stated that consistent financial assistance from external partners, particularly the European Union via the Ukraine facility, coupled with revenues from immobilized Russian assets supplied by G7 countries through the Extraordinary Revenue Acceleration Mechanism, are projected to fully meet Ukraine's international financial and governmental budget shortfalls in 2025. This support is expected to contribute to macroeconomic steadiness. Nevertheless, the bank observed that since mid-2024, the pace of economic growth has lessened and the rate of price increases has risen. They attributed this economic slowdown to a subpar agricultural yield for the year, a critical shortage of labor, as well as the ongoing assaults on the energy infrastructure in Ukraine. Russian President Vladimir Putin has given his consent to a package of urgent support initiatives designed to bring stability to Russia's beleaguered coal sector. These initiatives reportedly encompass reductions in transportation costs and assured export deals for significant coal-producing areas. Russia's coal industry has faced substantial difficulties stemming from Western economic restrictions, elevated operational expenses, declining international market prices, and logistical impediments. In 2024, the sector recorded financial deficits amounting to around $1.4 billion, and coal exports experienced a decrease for the third consecutive year, falling by 8%. During a State Duma Energy Committee hearing, Deputy Energy Minister Dmitry Islamov informed lawmakers that the crisis within the coal industry has reached such a critical point that entire production sites are being compelled to cease operations. He added that while Mr. Putin has endorsed the program formulated by the Energy Ministry, considerable effort was still needed to put these measures into effect, and he described the current circumstances regarding prices, exports, and tariffs as remaining very difficult. According to the Russian business publication Vedomosti, the deputy prime minister, in a communication to President Putin dated April 25th, advocated for further assistance beyond the current export assurances for the Karamovo region and existing discounts on rail fees for transporting coal. It was also reported by Reuters, which claimed to have seen Mr. Novak's letter, that he urged for high-level discussions with China and India aimed at eliminating import tariffs on Russian coal. The news agency noted that Western economic measures have led to a redirection of 80% of Russia's coal exports towards Asia. He also allegedly stated in the letter that 30 coal companies with a combined annual production of 30 million metric tons were at risk of insolvency. He allegedly put forward a proposal for a 60% reduction in fees for long-haul transportation and a 10.5% cut in fees for export-focused transport to remain in effect for all of 2025. He also recommended a 12.8% discount on rail charges for routes leading to western and southern ports for the current year. He also allegedly suggested establishing guaranteed export agreements for various regions, and to compensate for the anticipated loss of income from the lowered freight charges, he proposed that the railways receive unspecified federal subsidies. President Putin had previously mandated emergency support measures in December when nearly half of Russia's coal enterprises had become unprofitable, and reportedly provided his written endorsement of these alleged proposals on Wednesday, May 7th. For oil exports, April of 2025 represented an all-time low for Russia. This information was publicly shared on television by the Presidential Commissioner for Sanctions Policy in Russia. Mr. Vlasiuk stated that in April, there was an unprecedented nadir for Russia in terms of its earnings from oil exports. He indicated that the country's revenue from the sector was approximately 13 billion rubles this year, a sum he characterized as the least amount accrued since the commencement of the full-scale military invasion. When questioned about the possibility of the price of oil going down further, he acknowledged that this was a possibility. He pointed out that for several weeks, the global market price for oil has been trading below $60 per barrel. Most of his remarks were centered on how important it was for Russia to lift the current price cap imposed on its oil. Up next, we have international relations. Former Ambassador Bridget Brink, who formerly held the position of U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine, made a public statement on May 16th confirming that her resignation was a result of her disagreement with the foreign policy trajectory of the Trump administration. She stated this in an opinion piece published on May 16th in the Detroit Free Press. Ms. Brink, who had served in the ambassadorial capacity in Ukraine since 2022, accused the Trump administration of focusing its efforts on applying pressure to Ukraine, the nation subjected to Russia's extensive military campaign, rather than directly confronting Russia. She conveyed that after returning to her home state of Michigan from what she termed as the 3 most challenging years of her career, she concluded that she could no longer in good conscience implement the administration's policies and therefore felt it was her obligation to step down. The former ambassador stated that to continue the role would have made her participate in a course of action she viewed as both hazardous and morally objectionable. She expressed that she could not passively observe while a nation was being invaded, a democratic system was under assault, and children were perishing without consequence. She asserted that securing peace at any cost does not constitute true peace, but is instead a form of appeasement. The former ambassador criticized what she characterized as a broader decline in American leadership, remarking that the way the U.S. manages the war in Ukraine will communicate a great deal to both its allies and adversaries. Julie S. Davis, the new U.S. charge d'affaires to Ukraine, arrived in Kyiv on May 5th, as announced by the U.S. Embassy, following Ms. Brink's resignation. The initial direct peace negotiations between Russia and Ukraine in Turkey have concluded in under 2 hours on Friday. Ukraine has, with the backing of its Western allies, demanded the implementation of a temporary cessation of fighting as a preliminary step towards a peaceful resolution. The Kremlin has opposed such a truce, and a spokesperson for the Ukrainian ministry stated that after the discussions, they had not received a Russian agreement on this vital point. He emphasized that for meaningful negotiations to occur, the active use of weaponry must cease. The head of the Russian delegation expressed his satisfaction with the outcome of the talks and added that Moscow was prepared to continue the contacts. President Zelensky indicated that he had discussed the negotiations with U.S. President Donald Trump and the leaders of France, Germany, the United Kingdom, and Poland. In a social media post from a European leadership summit in Albania, he urged for the imposition of tough sanctions against Moscow if it were to reject a full and unconditional ceasefire. The one positive development was that in Istanbul, representatives both agreed to an exchange involving 1,000 prisoners of war from each side, according to the heads of both delegations. This would mark the largest such swap between the two parties. The Security Service of Ukraine commented that preparations have begun to implement the 1,000-per-1,000 prisoner exchange agreement with Russia, according to an official statement. The SSU's Joint Center for the Coordination of the Search and Release of Prisoners is in the process of compiling a list of Russian military personnel who Ukraine may transfer as part of the swap. Simultaneously, they are working in conjunction with the Ministry of Health and other state agencies to organize all the required infrastructure to receive the Ukrainian military personnel once they're released from captivity. According to a recent report from The Times, Russian officials informed U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff on May 8th that President Vladimir Putin would not entertain discussions about a 22-point peace proposal that had been formulated with contributions from Ukrainian and European allies. This account, reported by the Financial Times, was based on information from 3 individuals who were briefed on these discussions. The message regarding Putin's unwillingness to discuss the plan was conveyed following a Russian cabinet meeting, which subsequently led Mr. Witkoff to delay a planned meeting with the president originally scheduled for the current week. According to the Financial Times, referencing these three individuals familiar with the matter, they reported that the conversation took place via a phone call involving senior U.S. and Ukrainian officials. Among the participants were the Ukrainian Chief of Staff, the Defense Minister, and the U.S. Secretary of State, as well as Mr. Witkoff and General Keith Kellogg, who are President Trump's special envoys to Ukraine and Russia. Estonia's foreign minister stated on May 15th that a Russian military aircraft had entered NATO airspace without authorization. This occurred after the Estonian Navy attempted to stop a tanker believed to be part of Moscow's clandestine fleet of oil carriers, as reported by Reuters. The minister, speaking in Turkey prior to an informal NATO gathering, explained that the Russian jet was dispatched to assess the circumstances when the aforementioned ship declined to comply with Estonian authorities and was consequently being guided back towards Russian maritime territory. The Estonian foreign minister specified that the Russian fighter aircraft remained within NATO airspace for over a minute. He added that the incident indicated the Russian Federation's willingness to safeguard its shadow fleet, and he described the overall situation as genuinely grave. To conduct the interception, Estonia utilized an Augusta Westland AW-139 helicopter, an M-28 Skytruck reconnaissance plane, and the EML Raju patrol ship. Following the event on May 13th, the tanker in question returned to the Russian port of Primorsk. An Australian citizen, Oscar Jenkins, has received a 13-year sentence to be served in a strict correctional facility from a judicial body established by Russian authorities in eastern Ukraine. Officials aligned with the Kremlin announced on Monday, May 16th, that he was accused of participating in combat as a paid fighter against Russian military units. The entity referred to itself as the Supreme Court in the Luhansk Oblast, which is under Russian administration, determined Jenkins was culpable under Russian legal statutes for his involvement in armed hostilities as a paid combatant. The Russian government maintains the position that individuals fighting for payment are not afforded the same protections granted to prisoners of war under international legal frameworks, although they don't really observe those either, so I don't really understand what the distinction is. The judicial body asserted that Jenkins traveled to Ukraine from Melbourne in February of 2024 and entered into an agreement with the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense at a recruitment office in Ternopil. It was further alleged that he was subsequently sent to Donetsk Oblast. Jenkins was a member of the Ukrainian Army's 402nd Separate Rifle Battalion, a unit within Ukraine's 66th Separate Mechanized Brigade. He was declared unaccounted for near Mykolaiivka in the Luhansk Oblast on December 16th of 2024. Russian military units later acknowledged that he was in their custody. In contrast to many other international volunteers who joined Ukraine's efforts to counter Russia, Jenkins lacked prior military training. Australian news outlets portrayed him as a highly regarded individual within his community, a skilled athlete in cricket and football who had pursued studies in biomedical sciences before taking up a teaching position in China. It's believed he went to Ukraine sometime in 2024. Russia's FSB stated that it had looked into Jenkins' situation and accused him of involvement in unlawful actions up until his apprehension in December. The legal proceedings and the imposition of his sentence were carried out by entities that lack international recognition and function under the direction of Moscow. Penny Wong, Australia's Minister for Foreign Affairs, denounced the sentencing, describing the legal process as a fraudulent proceeding. In a statement on May 17th, Minister Wong conveyed that they maintain significant worries regarding Mr. Jenkins' well-being. She added that they are collaborating with Ukraine and other international partners such as the International Committee of the Red Cross to press for good treatment and his eventual freedom. Mr. Wong reaffirmed Australia's stance that Jenkins ought to be handled in compliance with international humanitarian principles, and that Russia's denial of his prisoner of war status contravenes established legal standards. Once again, I don't know why we're arguing about this prisoner of war distinction here. Russia has plenty of legal prisoners of war, and they don't observe the Geneva Convention, so it seems pointless to me. But Anyway, his situation gained global notice after Russian media broadcast a video in December of 2024 that appeared to depict him undergoing questioning and experiencing physical mistreatment. Although some news sources at the time questioned the authenticity of the video recordings, Russia ultimately confirmed to Australian authorities that Jenkins was detained, and they described his health as, quote, normal. The chief U.S. diplomat Marco Rubio engaged in a telephone discussion with his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov on Saturday, May 17th. This was confirmed by Tammy Bruce, a representative for the State Department, in an official communication. During their conversation, Secretary Rubio expressed approval of the agreement concerning the exchange of prisoners of war, which was achieved during the discussions between Ukraine and Russia. He also conveyed a firm message from President Trump, emphasizing the United States' dedication to bring about a durable conclusion to the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine. The official communication further indicated that the extensive peace proposal put forth by the United States delineates the most effective path to resolution, the one that they said they wouldn't entertain. Secretary Rubio underscored President Trump's appeal for an immediate cessation of active combat and a halt to the violent actions. Dmitry Peskov, a spokesperson for the Kremlin, affirmed that arrangements are underway for a telephone discussion between the Russian president and U.S. President Donald Trump. This was conveyed by Peskov in a remark to TASS, a Russian-aligned news agency, where he reiterated that preparations for such a call were indeed in progress. President Trump had previously announced that a phone call with President Putin was scheduled for Monday, May 19th. This was to be succeeded by discussions with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and representatives from NATO-allied nations. Trump specified that the conversation with Putin was set for 10 a.m. Washington time, and the purpose of the discussion was to bring the war to a close. And that wraps up all the main headlines for this week. We will now move to the next segment.
Hello guys, as always, I will now present this week's most important news from Germany regarding Ukraine. We are starting on Monday with a donation carried out by the German city of Borna. As part of a project of the German Society for Economic Cooperation, GEZ, which is funded by the German government, they have donated a 10-meter high scissor lift double-cab truck with a trailer and a minibus with a mechanical ram to their twin city Irpin. The lift will be used for repairs, infrastructure restoration, and green space maintenance, while the double-cab truck will expand the capabilities of Irpin's utilities. The minibus will be used in the veteran space, where it will assist veterans who use wheelchairs with examinations, rehabilitation programs, and more. The latest donation carried out by Borna is said to be worth over 100,000 euros. On the same day, another major donation was carried out. At the end of a week-long visit by a large Ukrainian delegation to the German Federal Agency for Technical Relief, THW, they have received 8 firefighting vehicles and rescue vehicles, 4 special vehicles, as well as off-road vehicles, equipment, and tools. The 8 firefighting and rescue vehicles are intended for communities in the Dnipropetrovsk, Mykolaiv, Kharkiv, and Zaporizhia oblasts, while the 4 special vehicles, which look like at least 2 Mercedes-Benz Zetros, will go to the State Emergency Service of Ukraine. The off-road vehicles, equipment, and tools are intended for local and volunteer fire brigades. On Wednesday, as part of a project by the German Society for International Cooperation, GEZ, which is funded by the German government, that's the same project I already mentioned in the beginning, Teltow, so another German city, has provided its twin city Kotyn, also with a double-cab truck with a trailer, a scissor lift, and battery-powered tools worth a total of around 55,000 euros. Sorry. And last but not least, I reported on Thursday that the German city of Delmenhorst is donating, I know, a lot of donations, is donating a decommissioned firefighting vehicle from its local fire brigade, as well as a boat trailer, including a hard shell boat, and a firefighting trailer which has a water cannon mounted on it, to the Ukrainian city of Nikopol. The equipment has already been handed over to the organization OK Human Rights Ukraine, which is responsible for transporting the donated material to Ukraine. And that's it for my segment. So back to you, Joseph.
On behalf of the brave,